Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. I have good news. I finally finished this revision of my draft and sent it off to my beta readers, so I have a couple of weeks to not be actively working on it, trying not to think about it too much, in which I can do some reading, because there's so many things I want to read right now. And I was able to read a little bit last month too. This is my what month is it? This is my October reading wrap up. The first book I'd like to talk about is Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher, one of her recent releases. This is an adult fantasy about a woman named Anja who is a scientist in her time. She loves poisons. Specifically, she has a passion for finding cures for poisons and understanding how they work. And as you may be able to tell from the cover art, this is kind of a Snow White retelling, but in a very fresh, imaginative way. One day, the king shows up at Anja's house and tells her that he fears one of his daughters is slowly being poisoned. None of the court physicians can figure it out, and he's enlisting Anja's help to come find out what is poisoning his daughter, how to cure it, and who's doing it. When your king asks you to do something, it's not really a request. So, of course, Anja says yes. She goes to this court and starts investigating. I loved the passion that Anja had for poisons and studying them, especially because it makes her a little bit strange compared to other people. But she is a scientist. She cares very deeply about this particular topic and this question. She wants to learn all she can about it, but she's doing it for the love of the question and the knowledge, and that's what's really driving her on. And of course, she wants to help people. It drives her crazy that people may be dying of things that could be prevented, and so she also does work on cures. One of the fascinating things about this book that I'm not going to get into detail about because I don't want to spoil anything is the magic system that we get drawn into with Anja as she is in this court investigating. So she's also starting to learn about this magic system and what it can and can't do and how it may be impacting things. It comes along with a great side character. There is a subplot of a romance within this story that does not take center stage, but I think the interaction of Anja with this character really helps richen the storyline. And I thought that plot was a very nice addition to the story. All in all, a very enjoyable read. Seems like this would be extremely autumnal, almost spooky kind of coded to read, and it's really not. I think you could enjoy this any type of year. It is, like I said, a Snow White retelling, subtly and in a new, inventive way. Next, I had an e-arc for Kate Elliott's newest release, The Nameless Land, that just came out last week as I'm filming this. It is the sequel to The Witch Roads. It's a duology that is now complete. I just haven't got my hands on a physical copy of The Nameless Lands yet. If you recall, I did an interview with Kate Elliott before The Witch Roads came out. We talked about her writing processes, her inspiration for the story, a little bit about the story. And in my following reading wrap up, I reviewed The Witch Roads. I think this is a great Kate Elliott novel, and since it's a duology, it's very compact. I can't really summarize The Nameless Lands for you because it's book 2 of 2, but in The Witch Roads, you have a deputy courier of this empire named Ellen, who works and lives on the fringes of the empire and has somewhat of a gray past. She escaped from a place, the Nameless Lands, and now lives in the Empire. She has a desire to be a surveyor, but right now she's a courier. She runs messages throughout this region of the Empire. What she loves most in the world is her adopted sister and her sister's son. When a very arrogant imperial prince arrives in her neck of the woods on a secretive mission, she gets pulled into it all, not only to help the Empire, but also to keep her nephew safe. There is some mysterious magic that occurs, and the story unfolds from there. There's great character development within this story. That's one thing that Kate Elliott does very well and spends a lot of time with. The world is much more fleshed out, and we learn a little bit more about the magic. All in all, The Witch Roads duology is complete. The Nameless Land was a very strong finish. I think I might have actually liked it a little bit more than The Witch Roads because we were setting up less. All the threads were coming together, and I think that you should give it a try. Next book that I read this month was one that I picked up because it was October and I wanted to read something a little bit more on the horror side of things. When I was browsing my local bookshop recently, the owner had a whole, table set up of this type of seasonal read, and I picked up The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. The setup is that this professor wants to study a haunted house and do it right. He has heard rumors that there may be such activity that occur at Hill House, so he arranges to rent it for the summer, and he invites people who may be sensitive to those sorts of happenings in their past to come stay with him at the house with the intention that they need to keep notes on anything that occurs. So in addition to the professor, there are two women. One of them is our main character, Eleanor, and the nephew of the people who currently own the house, just to kind of keep an eye on things, but also keep him out of trouble for the summer. They arrive at Hill House, which is very atmospheric. The book opens with, from the house's perspective, like it is alive and it is watching. Then we follow Eleanor as she arrives at this house, meets the others, and they begin to have experiences. Cold spots in rooms. The house doesn't appear to sit right architecturally. Like when the house was built, all the angles were slightly wrong, so it's very off-putting to be in. And you can look out of one room and expect to find another window for like an opposite wing of the house, but nothing is quite right. There are bumps in the night, apparitions of sorts. Our main character is either like slowly going mad, or the house is feeding into her, or something, because she is affected by it. I read most of it on Halloween. It's not very long. And when I finished this book, my main impression was like, what? Like, what exactly just happened? It's kind of open-ended. It made me want to go back and read some discussions that people had about this book and what happened with Eleanor and the house, etc. What was actually going on here? The house is very creepy. The stuff that's going on is very unsettling, but it wasn't too horror, too scary for me to read, and I don't have like a high tolerance level. So if you're interested in reading some horror, haunted house type stories, this is, I believe, like one of the originals. The only other similar book that I've read is The House of Leaves, which I read last year, and that creeped me out more because it's a little bit more psychological than what was going on here. But I'm still glad that I checked this one out and pushed outside of my normal wheelhouse a little bit. And last, I did listen to an audiobook. This is a reread. I forgot to mention that in September, I did listen to The Daughter of the Forest on audiobook again. This is one of my very, very favorite books. I've talked about it a bit on this channel. I did a whole dedicated video to this book. Since I had read Daughter of the Forest, I always want to read it in the fall. I really felt compelled to continue on and re-listen to Son of the Shadows, which I also very much love. I don't know if it's as much as a favorite as Daughter of the Forest, but there's something about the Son of the Shadows, just the characters in it, the romance that's in it. It's very different from anything that I had read before. But still, since it's Juliet Marillier, she just gets me like feeling all of the feelings of the characters, and she does such great work with character conflict. How can they possibly achieve their goals and get what they want when a lot of the characters are at cross purposes, whether that's for misunderstandings or not, and you just wonder like, how is all of this going to work out? Because you really do feel it so much. Like, I really feel it with my full heart, and so I like to revisit these books every year or so. And yeah, I enjoyed my experience listening to these audiobooks again. And those are the books that I finished in October. I did start another one and decide to DNF it, but I will talk about that more the next time I do an unhaul video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and that your autumn is getting off to a great start. And as always, don't forget to support your local library. Thanks.